Let's go to our first political panel of the afternoon. Sydney Liberal MP Jason Falinski from Perth, Labor MP Patrick Gorman. Gentlemen, thanks both for your time. Jason, I noticed in your tweet you've got the boxing gloves on today. You might need the spinner's hat to talk up this economy. What's going on?
If this is your first political panel for the afternoon, how many do you have? After Pat and I, that should be enough for at least a week.
Well, I've got the 3-hour shift, so look, I'm sure you'll be the best one. But so we've had, this is the 2 days of news. Wage growth still sluggish, stuck at 2.2%, and now unemployment up with 20,000 jobs lost. What's going on?
Well, look, the monthly figures jump around a lot, so you would expect to see from time to time figures go, 0.1 or 0.2% either side of what's been the long-term average. Long-term average has been down. We've created nearly 1.5 million jobs, or the economy has created nearly 1.5 million jobs since the government was elected. You've got employment growth at 2.5%. You've got real wage growth, which is, by the way, double the OECD average, higher than anyone else in the G7. And you've got 0.6% real wage increases as well. You have minimum wage increases that have always been higher than the rate of inflation. This is the sort of stuff you're seeing under this government. We'll continue those policies that have delivered those solid results.
We're not in the G7, but aside from that one...
No, but we can compare ourselves to the G7, Tom.
Well, we can compare ourselves to Botswana if we want.
But we're not. We're comparing ourselves to the 7 largest economies in the world, who happen to be in the G7.
Right. But it makes more sense often to compare yourself to groups you're in because they're similar
like the OECD.
Let's move on from that.
We are growing.
That's fine. But this is also the biggest drop in jobs for 5 years, and we've just had a big income tax cut
since September.
Should be going through.
Tom. This is the first drop in jobs since September 2016, which, if my maths is right, is only 3 years, or 3 years and 2 months.
I'm saying the biggest drop. Since 2014.
Okay. All right. Well, and as I say, the monthly figures are variable.
Fine.
Sorry, what was that? Pardon me.
Despite the biggest drop in the 5 years, and we've got the income tax cut flowing through the economy, that just sounds like a bad combination to me. That it might not be working.
Well, I'm sorry, it sounds like a bad combination to you, and I don't want you to be vexed by this. But these are monthly figures. We need to see what the trend is. I think the economy is doing well. You will see, especially compared to the G7 and the OECD, of which we are a member, as that was a concern to you. I think the government is doing everything that we possibly can. The economy is performing relatively well in a global sense. There's no doubt there have been some global headwinds, but looking forward, as the IMF has said, you should start to see a return to long-term growth trends.
Patrick Gorman, I haven't forgotten about you. Your take on all of this, I'm sure a similar one?
Well, I'm relieved that at least one person in the Liberal government has an economic plan, and that's Jason's plan to get Australia into the G7. It would be great if some of his colleagues would have such optimistic views on the Australian economy. G7. Well, Jason's got to do it, and good on him. I wish him well in his endeavour. But when it comes to economic growth, Jason just said that the government is doing all it can. The government is not doing all it can. Labor has been saying very clearly it would be good to see that second round of tax cuts potentially brought forward. It would be good to see infrastructure investment that is already committed in the budgets to be brought forward. And when you've got more and more people going onto the unemployment queue, which costs the government a large amount in welfare payments, you've got to ask, wouldn't they have been better in the first place to have just increased Newstart for those who do need it to help stimulate demand in the economy? Instead, you've got more people going on the unemployment queues because this government doesn't have an economic plan. It's not good enough.
Well, you do have to recognise, though, the recent years of jobs growth have been very good in terms of adding jobs to the economy. You'd admit that, wouldn't you?
Oh, of course. I mean, every person that gets a job is adding to our economic capacity.
Not just every person, but that there's been very strong jobs growth overall for a few years.
Yes, and I do acknowledge that. The reality is, though, that we've, over the last few months, become very clear that there is no plan for the future. And the government can give itself as many awards and pats on the back that it likes about how they've done in the past, But what we're seeing now is that lack of a plan about what's next is really holding the national economy back.